Good can come from evil. And over again we can see as Christians that God brings goodness out of terrible situations. We even see this in more recent times when there are disasters, when there are floods, when there is COVID. It can bring the worst out in people, but it also gives the opportunity for people to respond in most holy ways, in most sacred ways, with ways of goodness. Here we have the beginning of the great story of Joseph with his long sleeves and his technicolor dream coat, as we hear from the Old Testament, where his brothers were jealous of him because his father, or their father, seemed to like Joseph more than the others and gave Joseph a fancy jacket. This happens as a story that could easily happen in many families where siblings become jealous. Hopefully it doesn't happen all that often that siblings then decide, well, let's kill our brother. Then they realise, oh, well, let's not kill him, let's make some money off him, let's sell him into slavery. Even though the Jewish people had been brought out of slavery, Joseph is then sold into slavery and he's taken back into Egypt. But we know the story. Good comes from this. Joseph goes as a slave to Egypt. He ends up becoming the right-hand man to the Pharaoh. During a time of great prosperity, Joseph is able to understand the dreams of the Pharaoh and an understanding of the environment. And Egypt then stores up enough grain during the 7 years of good weather so that the 7 years of drought that was to follow after it, they had sufficient enough food. And we know the story, good then comes. There is a great reunion, and we'll probably hear more about this. Here we have Joseph being sold, we're told, for 20 pieces of silver. This is a significant little element that we see. We know that Jesus was also sold for just a few pieces of silver. And God brought something great. He brought redemption out of that selling of Jesus, where Jesus was sold by Judas and then taken to the cross. Let's be people who, when things get down, when things get difficult, let's not drop our bundle. It can easily happen. It's easy that we can live in fear and almost give up and allow that negativity to happen that's happening around us to really eat away at us. Or we can take the approach knowing that God will win. God has a plan. And God's plan will adapt to our sinfulness and to the disasters that happen around us to bring goodness out of the most difficult of situations. So let's continue to pray intently during Lent for those disaster situations that are happening in our own lives, in our community, our world, that goodness will come, that people will respond with goodness, and that God's will be done. There will be the victory for God at the end, as we see both in this parable that Jesus gives in the gospel and the story eventually, as we'll see in our first reading. Here in this gospel, we have this parable of Jesus telling them about how the fact that God is created a bit like a vineyard. He sent prophets to try to help people to bring fruit, to produce fruit. But eventually, as we're told, if people don't produce fruit, God will win. People will be taken, put out of the vineyard, and there will be those who produce fruit will be given a place. So let's be enthusiastic in looking forward to the future. Let's not be too negative about what's happening in the present and know that God will win. And that we can, as the responsorial psalm said, let us remember the marvels the Lord has done. The Lord has done incredible things in the past out of difficult situations, and this will happen also in the future as well.